Welcome back to the Perfectly Honest Podcast, where we talk about families, relationships, and our testimonies of Jesus Christ. I'm Kiahna.
And I'm Michael.
And today we're going to be talking about the Barbie movie.
Yes.
Ooh! But before we get into that, if I'm being perfectly honest, I've been really enjoying watching America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah.
Like the old ones.
Yeah, we started doing that. That was a good, perfectly honest moment.
Thanks.
We just started doing that because I always watched them a lot as a kid. And Coleman loves them. He'll sit and laugh at everything. And
especially the animal videos.
Yeah, he likes the animals. If I'm being perfectly honest, I am really excited about getting some new phones this week.
Ooh, I'm really excited about this too.
And this is something we're going to talk about more, maybe in some more episodes. But basically, we are just kind of sick of our smartphones. So
yeah, suffice to say.
Yeah, suffice to say. So we got not dumb phones, but we'll
I
reveal
wanted
more.
Yeah, I wanted to get a flip phone. We bought 2 different flip phones and they were ridiculous. Like,
yeah, because we were trying to do a detox and both of them had Facebook, YouTube,
internet, and they were huge, like made for senior citizen, ginormous, looked like a clown.
Made for senior citizens with big faces.
Yeah, with huge long faces.
Yeah. So that was kind of like interesting. So the detox, we saw a lot online about like, doing a detox, getting a, flip phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's actually crazy how hard it can be to find a good phone for that, just because you have Facebook and YouTube, even though it's just a crappier version of it.
Everyone
it's still
tries to add the bells and whistles to the flip phones, and I'm like, I literally just wanted basic calling abilities.
Yeah.
That's it.
So we found something, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So tune in for us next week.
Yeah.
Or
the week after. Probably 2 weeks.
Yeah, something like that. After we've kind of been with it for a bit.
Yeah. Anyway, so not this week, but last week, Michael and I went on a date.
Yes.
To see the Barbie movie. And like going into it, I think we both had some preconceived notions and ideas about how the movie would be based on like what we'd heard from other people.
Right.
And there were a lot of things that were in line with what we thought it was going to be, but it also surprised us in a lot of ways.
It was really surprising, and it was really well, okay, before we get any further into this, I'm just going to say we are going to get into spoilers.
Oh yes, this is not spoiler free.
We're not going to just talk generally about it. So yeah, we're going to talk about specifics here.
So if you want to go see the movie,
then pause this, come back later when you want to hear about, okay, what are,
our opinions
on this. So first impression, this is really funny. I'm just going to say like what my journey of the last week since watching has been.
Because honestly, it took a long time to process watching the movie.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think so, but so basically the bias is stated at the very beginning. It's like this is based on feminism. Right? So so there's like the whole plot is about feminism and the patriarchy.
Yes.
And that's the war. That's the conflict, right? Between those two forces. So my first impression was like, okay, I am happy that they're stating their bias at the very beginning of this movie.
Yes.
Because typically, like in Disney movies, Disney, you bad boy, they typically just like slide things in.
Yes, it's very like sneaky.
It's like super sneaky, and you're like, I'm going to go see
a kids movie,
and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's like propaganda here,
some like weird underlying messages.
Yeah, and I think that now what my opinion is that I think I actually really like the movie.
You did not feel that way when we first got out of the theater.
I didn't feel this way when I first got out of the theater, but as you think about it, you're like, oh, there's a lot of interesting things to think about here. So not like it's my favorite movie ever, but yeah, I think I came out of it liking it. So
yeah. Well, and then so my experience, it's going to movies for a date night is very difficult for me.
Yeah.
Me and Coleman are still very attached. I still have just a hard time being away for like hours at a time.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly like, I'm like watching the movie, and then it's like every couple minutes, oh, I hope Coleman's okay. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah.
But he was like with his cousins and aunt and uncle, so he was totally fine.
Yeah, he was having a blast. So while we were at the movie, which is good.
So that's like the first layer. The second layer, I am a girl who like played with Barbies, you
Right.
know, as a kid. And so like seeing Barbie in like huge on a huge screen, the sets, the costumes were immaculate. Like especially that opening scene where
Right.
you're introduced to Barbie Land and her Barbie dream house. Like that is exactly what it felt like to play with Barbie and imagine being in her house.
Yeah, I know. It was actually really funny how they made it, like the plastic houses and like
Yes.
fridge and drinking the milk and like all this stuff. You're like, it was really like immersive
Yes.
in that way, and very well done.
Yeah.
Like the set, kind of, because sometimes like less is more. Like that's something that like we do talk about like in theater, and they actually played to that to some extent, because it was like we really feel like this is Barbie, but the person is like not plasticky looking,
Yes,
or it's
totally.
not like animated.
Right.
So they did a really good job at like playing to all of the things, while still like creating real human interactions and having that flow really well. So it was really well made.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about like some of the points, right? So like
Yeah.
this is where the back and forth comes in, okay? Let's talk about I want to talk about the beginning and end.
Okay.
Okay. So definitely huge spoilers here. And then talk about like some of the themes and things that happen in the middle.
Yes.
Okay, because there's still things I don't like about the movie.
Yeah.
But my overall kind of take about it is like that it shows a lot of different problems, and it shows a perspective from, it's like the world from a feminist perspective.
Yeah.
And it shows their opinions. It shows you how kind of nuts feminism is, but it also makes fun of itself.
Yeah. More self-aware.
Yeah, but you kind of see like, oh man, like extreme feminism is not good, kind of thing. But it was really interesting because like people I talked to afterwards, like I was getting that, I was like, man, there's like really pushing this feminism. And then there were people who were like, yeah, but that was part of the like the joke of it.
Satire.
And the satire was like, this is not necessarily a good thing. We're pushing this really hardcore, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. So okay, let's start with the beginning.
Yeah, let's start with the beginning.
So like the very opening sequence, they mirror the opening of 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a good watch. It's really old.
Yep.
Kind of a niche thing, but it's really good. So in the original 2001: A Space Odyssey, they show these apes in kind of a rough terrain.
Yeah.
And this magic space object lands in the middle of their land.
A monolith.
And they all go crazy, and it's kind of about the evolution of mankind.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so in Barbie, they showcase these little girls playing with baby dolls.
Same set. It's like out in the middle of nowhere.
Completely mirroring it. And then they have Barbie land in the middle of the terrain, like the space monolith.
Yeah.
And the little girls go crazy, and they smash their baby dolls.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not the only one that was sitting there like just in shock and kind of like horror. It was just because these little girls are pretending to be mothers, and it was like, oh, but Barbie came along and she brought feminism and told little girls that they could be whatever they wanted to be. So the little girls are like breaking these babies.
Yeah.
And it was just, it makes your skin crawl.
Yeah, it was really odd. And we do have our bias on this. Like, we are more like conservative.
Yeah.
So
I think they know that by now.
As you know, that's kind of where we lie. So I mean, we still try to have open conversation about everything, but part of the reason why it was possibly so jarring to us was it had this like abortion message.
Yeah.
That kind of went with it. And I haven't really seen anyone else say this, but to me, that's what I was reading. And I think that the movie isn't saying that you shouldn't have abortions.
Right.
But the movie is saying that we shouldn't reject motherhood.
Or we should reject motherhood?
No, the movie's saying we shouldn't reject motherhood. Mm-hmm. That's like the message.
Oh yeah.
Like that's said later on in the movie. So like the first thing was like kind of this weird thing. It was like feminism is glorified, and because of that, it's like one message is like, okay, women should not, like worry about. It's basically like motherhood destroyed. Like women should be
Yes.
doing jobs and doing other things. They
Yes.
shouldn't be moms.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the other message that I was seeing was also abortion, So let us know what you think about that opinion.
Yeah. Well,
that's my take.
So I would say, like, with the original, like, first wave of feminism,
Yeah.
came like birth control
Yes.
and abortion.
Right.
So I could see that being like an underlying
like
message.
if you look at the history,
Yeah.
it makes sense that they were saying here's the birth of feminism
Yeah.
and the end of motherhood. What I want to say here is that the opinions on abortion that we have are pretty strong,
Yeah.
like we're pretty like pro-life on that. So that was like a message that was like, I feel like that's what they're saying. I bet a lot of other people would say, like, that's probably not what they were saying, but like imaging is everything.
Yeah.
And these are professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, those professionals thought, does this look like abortion? Oh, we should probably keep it, right?
Mm.
So like, that's kind of what you have to think of as well.
Yeah.
So like, keep an open mind to that, whether you're pro or against abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want to point out that imaging.
Yeah.
As kind of thing. So like, some people like us might not like that, but other people might be like, that's great.
That's liberating.
So
yeah. And then we move into the middle of the movie, Barbie Land. You
Yes.
see extreme feminism. The Kens really do not have a role.
yeah,
You see them belittled, and they don't have much meaning in life except to impress their Barbies
right.
and be eye candy. And then I don't want to like just say the whole plot line, but it goes along so much with the themes
right.
of Ken and Barbie go into the real world, and
Right.
Ken is introduced to patriarchy, and Barbie for the first time in her life is treated very poorly and sexualized,
Right.
like in the real world. And so their roles are completely reversed.
Right.
So we see the very strong messages of the patriarchy and that men can be more than what Ken believed men were.
Right, exactly. And I want to say something too, like in the real world scenario, that was one of the parts that I really didn't like when I was sitting in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't mind it because I realize the only reason I didn't like it was because that was my lens of reality, right?
Right.
And this is the lens of the reality painted through the eyes of a feminist, right? Whether that's the director or not. It was basically like, here's the reality as feminists see it, or even women see it,
Yeah.
generally speaking. And that was in opposition to Barbie Land, right?
Yes.
So they were both like kind of opposites. And
Juxtaposed.
yeah, exactly. And so it was just like, okay, I like calling it the matriarchy because it's just funny. Here's the matriarchy, here's the patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
Here's feminist land, here's the patriarchy. And when I saw it that way, I was like, oh, this is interesting now.
Yeah.
And slightly farce because Ken, he runs around, he grabs a bunch of books on the patriarchy. Like, where are you going to find books that are like...
Because they're like at a middle school.
Yeah, it's like how to do patriarchy, right? And they're at a middle school. So it's kind of funny.
It's very comical.
Because it's like, okay, that's not very realistic.
Yeah.
And I think that the director was trying to say, like, this isn't necessarily a fully realistic view of the world.
Right.
But pretty close.
Yeah.
They wanted to make it seem as much of a lens as possible. So that was really made the at least the story impactful in its own way. And I have many arguments against the patriarchy in my own mind, like how does the I'm like, okay, I can see where the patriarchy makes sense, but how much is it actually happening today, and how much should we be worrying about the patriarchy as much as we should like the deep state or something like that, right? So it's like,
don't cancel us. But
don't cancel us, deep state. I don't care.
Well, it's kind of interesting though, because you watching it as a male was so different than me watching it as a female.
Yeah.
Because when Barbie enters the real world and is immediately like sexualized by everyone around her, you were like, oh, that doesn't really happen. And I'm like, it does.
Because that's not my world.
Yeah.
Like I don't hang around guys like that, you know, but like you've experienced it.
But like she gets catcalled by construction workers and you're like, oh, like no one would actually do that in real life. I'm like, no, that happens all the time to women.
Right.
And it's nuts and it shouldn't.
Right.
But like that is real.
Yeah, exactly.
And scary and terrible.
Yeah. So Ken, he goes back to Barbie Land. brings the patriarchy there.
Yep, makes his kingdom. Is that what they called it?
Yeah, they called it kingdom. And it's really funny, like, as much as they were, and this is what this whole podcast is about. It's like, why are we putting down men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this movie is really putting down men. Now, it played the gender roles really well. That's one of the best parts about the movie.
Yeah.
Is they played men and women like so well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the same time, like, you know, like men are kind of doofuses sometimes. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, they did have some redeeming messages later on.
Mm-hmm.
When the kingdom finally falls.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they start talking, like, I don't necessarily like, there was like some things I didn't necessarily like, but they did generally talk about men feeling worthless
Mm-hmm.
and alone in a lot of things, and I was like, okay, so they are playing to some things, saying like, okay, there are some problems here, like that men are experiencing in the real world.
Yes.
And anyone who is oppressed by any party, that's not a good thing.
Right.
And I will say this too: the Kens were so funny when they, like, even the patriarchy when it came to
gosh.
Barbie Land, it was really funny.
It was super comical.
Like, they made it really comical, and so they made it pretty easy to digest.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, wait, do they like the patriarchy for a second? And then they were like, it's the worst thing ever. It's worse than
Yes.
It's way worse than feminism, right? And so that was kind of like, you know, a message. And I'm like, I'm okay with them throwing that because they said they're biased at the beginning once again. So, you know.
What was so interesting to me watching this movie is, for me, the messages were so loud and so in your face. I walked out of the theater so confused. I was like, I have no idea what they wanted me to believe.
Right.
And I am having a hard time forming my opinion because everything was so brightly colored.
Right. Well, and that's what I was thinking about afterwards. I was like, that was really genius because that's how they were really portraying the world.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing was an image of the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was like, okay, here's the real world, here's Barbie Land. It was all a message of like, how loud is the world?
Yes.
How loud does it feel?
Yeah.
And they captured that.
They did.
Like, they really, like, it was frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And they were even shouting out their opinions. Like, their own opinions.
Yes.
They were shouting out. But I think they were still trying to capture that it was really annoying.
Yeah. And just hard to pick out what you believe to be true, if that makes sense.
Right. And that's what I think, this is why I like the movie, is because hearing how everyone interacted with it. Because I interacted different than anyone else.
Yeah.
And everyone had a different reaction. Republicans are completely split on it. Like, it's really funny. I'm seeing, like, different people, like, who are usually all in unison agreeing, completely split.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a win for feminists. Good job, you guys.
You confused
like,
everyone.
You're fine. Yeah. Like, good job. You stated your bias and you still got a split.
Yeah.
Like, that is really, like, a good job. And it was because they played to emotion so well. And they played to controversial topics and they made them funny.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't see that a lot. And it would be even good. I'm like, I'm cool with that. I'd appreciate more from the left and from the right if they're all able to do that really well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, like, now that I've digested it more, it did feel more of, like, the patriarchy is bad and feminism is also bad.
But
because,
not
like,
as bad.
But not as bad. That was, like, the overall message.
Yeah.
Because at the very end, it's like, oh, we're going to make some changes in Barbie Land. Like, Kens will have more power. But it was still like, but you still can't have any positions of power. Like, women are still going to rule this
you
world.
Still have to kind of try to, like, work your way up and stuff. So it's like, there are arguments in there that we can take apart.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, when we look at, like, you know, wage gap or whatever, right? Like, there's stuff that we can take apart there. And there's lots of, like, extra evidence. There's lots of extra details that we don't talk about when it comes to those things. But, you know, they did a good job at saying the things in their lens. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with someone expressing their opinion. And it actually made me step back and realize, oh, sometimes I'm not as okay or ready to accept a new opinion.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of those things where it's kind of a healthy, like, spectacle to be like, hey, here's our opinions. Think whatever you want about it. You know, because what we haven't seen is the actors and directors afterwards saying, I can't believe you said you hated it.
Right.
They're just letting people react.
Yeah, totally.
And that never happens in
No.
Hollywood.
No.
They might, maybe there are some things that I haven't seen, but I think for the most part, with how split everybody is and all the different comments, they're like, let them do it.
Well, yeah, because people keep talking about it and creating content about it, like us.
Yeah, and who cares for them? They've made tons of money. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I will say one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is this like scene at the end where Barbie gets a glimpse of what being human feels like and looks like.
Yeah.
And it just like shows flashes of big milestones in like a human's life and you know, like motherhood and graduation.
It showed a lot of motherhood in that.
And it was like so beautiful, and it just had this song, and it just kind of made you tear up a little bit, like, I'm so happy that I'm a human and not a Barbie. Yeah,
exactly. And I'll say too about that ending, and once again, spoilers, if you made it this far, then what the heck are you doing? The very ending, she goes into the clinic, right?
Well, you don't know where she's going. She might be going to a job interview.
And this was really well done because they made it look like she was going in for a job interview. Mm-hmm. And then she goes in to see her gynecologist. And that was really good because they showed that it didn't matter where she was going, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But it also, they did paint the picture a little bit of like how important it is to be a mother and how beautiful that can be.
Yes.
I'm going to be a little controversial now, though. The question you ask at the end is, where's the guy, right? But it's not about the guy. It's a feminist movie, right? But, you know, our thought was like, oh, man, she probably went to like a sperm bank or something, right?
Yeah. Well, so that's what we thought like initially. After talking to your brother,
right?
After him and his wife saw the movie, his brother said, oh, well, she went to the gynecologist and it just shows that she's human now. Like she has human body parts. And I was like, that's actually true. Like, you don't just go to the gynecologist because you want to get pregnant.
Right.
You go because you need to check up on your vaginal health.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot of messages there. I think that the main one was not like, I mean, everything was in a funny way, kind of like a diss on men.
Yeah.
And I think that, once again, this was masterfully done because the way that feminists feel are that they are always being dissed, right? And so they're kind of like giving the whole point was giving men a dish of their own, you know, medicine kind of a thing, which I think can be healthy, even though I don't like dissing men generally speaking. But it's like sometimes we have to hold up a mirror, right? And that's what they thought needed to be held up. But yeah, I'm still happy that the message at the end was that motherhood is really important, and it's an important choice to make.
Yes.
And that it's important for women to feel like they do have control, that they do have choice, because everybody has choice.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about issues at large sometimes so much that we're like, okay, this is how we really think society should go. We think that women should be mothers. But when talking to an individual who says, I don't want to be a mother, then I'm not going to say, well, you should. You have to be. Right? Because it's important that everyone makes their own choices.
Absolutely.
It's important to choose motherhood.
Yeah.
It's important to think about it heavily, you know? And I think Barbie did a good job at like thinking about it with a lot of weight, right? So there was just a lot to kind of unpack there. Now, thinking about the end and the beginning, bookended, I thought was interesting because
looking
the
at it
beginning
full
was anti-motherhood, the end was pro, right?
Right.
And so when you look at that as a whole, you look at the movie as a whole, you end up getting this image that's like, okay, there's a lot of different signals being sent to us. There's a lot of things the world is saying. And they are basically saying, make your own choices. Everybody make your own choices and don't suppress anybody else. I think that's the biggest message.
That's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you said that, like, the movie just has so many loud messages and telling you what to do, but the takeaway is make your own choices, because you know that the monologue that everyone's been talking about in the movie from the mom of the daughter. She has that big monologue of, oh, you can't be too fat and you can't say this and blah, blah, blah.
It made it seem like that was the crowning moment of the movie.
Well, it kind of was for some people. I think that was their favorite part. But it's that same thing is like, guess what? The world is going to tell you so many things. It's going to tell you to be a people pleaser, tell you to be louder, or
right.
You are going to get so many messages, but the most important thing is to make your own choices.
Exactly. And that was really good. And that's what was funny. It was like they were talking about brainwashing, like the Kens are brainwashing the Barbies. That was so funny. And they portrayed the men so well. Like, hey, can you are you watching The Godfather? I've never seen it. What? You know?
Yeah.
Like, can you start from the beginning and talk through the whole thing? And it was seriously like so funny. Their comeback was perfect. The dance scenes were great. You know, what was your favorite highlight? Actually, I want to know what your favorite.
My favorite moment was when the very first musical number where they show Barbie waking up in her dream house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good. This is such a random moment, but I really like when Ken okay, this was after the worst scene in the whole movie though, where Barbie was giving an apology to Ken for not liking him basically. And then it just evolved into this nothing speech. Like they were both just like babbling cavemen. But Ken takes off his jacket and he throws it
to a random
Ken. It seems like he's gonna throw it to his enemy Ken, but he throws it to a random Ken. It's like, thanks Ken, and they're have this moment. And you're like, that's just some random guy. It's not one of the I ones.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So overall, would you say you like it now?
I would say overall, I from the beginning, I thought I liked that this movie was made.
Yeah.
Even though I was like, but I can't like it. I'm not supposed to, right? But I think I do like it. I don't know how much I would watch it, but I do like it.
Yeah. I think it brought some very interesting thinking and talking points.
Exactly. And that's what I like movies for. But I like my opinion being challenged.
But I don't think that I would go see it again.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wrapping up this episode with a spiritual thought, I thought it would be good to talk about just equality of men and women in the universe.
Yeah.
So this is something that Michael and I have been talking about this week specifically, but Elohim is the word in Hebrew for God.
As found in Genesis and throughout the scripture.
And it's actually plural, meaning gods.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do a deeper study into it, you learn that God would cease to be God without his female counterpart. So Elohim is made up of Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother equally. Mm-hmm. And I just love that so much. Oh yeah, I'll share this quote. It's from Elder Erastus Snow from the Quorum of the 12 in 1849. Wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was. Wow.
There can be no God except he is composed of the man and woman united, and there is not in all the eternities that exist or ever will be a God in any other way. Mm-hmm. And I just really, really love that because, you watch a movie like that where men and women are so divided, and that at the core, if men and women would just be united in their partnerships and whatnot, they would find so much happiness and fulfillment. And that's something that we hold to be true, in our church, in our doctrine, that men and women are so equal and created equal, and that we have equal opportunity to become gods together and create worlds together. And yeah.
Yeah. And I'll add this too, in the movie, I remember thinking, man, I wish that they had talked about how men and women can come together
mm-hmm.
and be equal.
Yeah.
In partnership. And that is not a message that you find in the world.
No.
It's only one that you find in religion, especially in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's just constantly talked about. And, now that probably wouldn't have served their plot purposes.
No.
Right? But I really appreciate, that message of that we're equal
mm-hmm.
In our partnership, but we're unequal in that we have different skills, different talents, different, natures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Like, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, because we're supposed to complement each other.
Yeah, we're supposed to complement each other. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. And it's okay to be just you, because you'll find someone else who will be able to fit with you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening today. It was so fun to talk about the Barbie movie and to talk about those beautiful Kens. That's the best. That's what I got out of it. Thank you for listening, and if you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to build that big, and also follow us on Instagram, and send us a message or an email or anything like that. You can email us at theperfectlyhonestpodcast@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.